today since we will be considering a budget for the coming year. With that short intro, let me turn it over to Scott to call the roll.
Sure. Larry Goldstein.
I seem to be here.
Okay. Mark Fisher Colbury.
Here.
Haifa Abdul Haq. Maria Bonneville.
Present.
Deborah Dees. Elena Flowers.
Present.
Judy Gasson.
Here.
David Higgins.
Present.
Pat Levitt.
Here.
Shlomo Melmed.
Here.
Chris Miaskowski. Vito Imbasciani.
Here.
Carol Watson. Keith Yamamoto. All right, we have 9 right now. Just one short.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Scott. And again, thank you to all of you who've made time to be here. So today's major item is consideration of the budget for the coming year. And I gather that Pune will be the person who will present that. And if I'm right, please take it away.
Yes, it is me. Thank you. I'm Pune Simpson, the Senior Director of Finance, and I will be presenting the fiscal year 23-24 budget this morning. I wanted to start our presentation, as we do with all other presentations, with our mission statement, which is accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. Let's see if the PowerPoint can you see the PowerPoint presentation? Excellent.
It's great.
Excellent. So on slide 3, we're bringing back a couple of images you may recall from previous research budget presentations. We wanted to summarize the entirety of the funds made available in Prop 14 in the 2 buckets that we have. The larger of the 2 buckets is for research grants, equaling $4.9 billion. The smaller of the 2 buckets is for administration, which includes the cost of issuing the bonds. With regards to the research bucket, the $4.9 billion, of that, $811 million has already been committed. And today we're going to review a proposal for the research budget for 23-24. So with that, I just want to go over our agenda this morning. I'm going to talk about the 22-23 approved research budget first. Then we'll talk about the proposed 23-24 research budget, some of the major drivers and financial considerations for that.
Pune, can you remind us all, what is the anniversary date for the CIRM budgeting?
It's July 1st to June 30th is the fiscal year.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
And Pune, sorry to interrupt. We have a quorum, Larry.
Great news. Okay.
Thank you.
So with the 22-23 research budget, we have a slide that summarizes all the activity. In the second column, we break out the $426.7 million that the board approved into our 5 pillars. And to summarize what's happened in the last 10 months, in the third column, we show all the amounts that have already been committed. And in the fourth column, those that are pending to be committed. We combine those for a total of $330.4 million for what is expected to be committed for the 22-23 fiscal year. That leaves a variance of $96.3 million. And I'm happy to discuss those in detail if you want. What you do see there is that one of the discs was budgeted in 22-23, but is planned to go before the board in September. And I don't know if you guys have any questions on this slide or if I should keep going. Let me know if you want to discuss any of this.
Well, I think you can proceed.
Okay, perfect. Just so you know, of the $96.3 million, all funds left over from this fiscal year that were not committed are not lost. They're available in future fiscal years for research allocation by the board. So in slide 8, we're going to look at the 23-24 budget, and the major drivers that are contributing to that are the 19 GWG reviews we're planning, 1 AAWG review, and 1 facilities working group that we're planning. A very busy calendar. We're continuing the funding for our core programs, discovery, translation, and clinical pillars. We're continuing the funding for conference grants under the education pillar. There's some new initiatives launched, including the shared labs and access and affordability patient support program in 23-24. And then the DISC neuro concept will be presented in the fall of 23-24. With that said, I want to get into a little bit of the detail of how we estimate the budget for each of the pillars. When we prepare the budget, we want to make sure there's enough money. So if the performance in a given year hits our highest performance in past years, we have enough research funds budgeted. So specifically for the clinical pillar, we have a new paradigm with the increase in the volume of applications in 22-23 due to successful recruitments and changes in the economic climate. Based on the 10 months of actuals and the estimated from the 2 remaining months of this fiscal year, we're proposing a new level of funding in 23-24. That level is $252 million, and it's budgeted at the max performance because of the nature and time sensitivity of those grants. For translation, we're proposing $84.6 million, according to the average number of awards. We arrived at this methodology based on data provided by the team on the performance in the past. In slide 11, we are proposing $62.5 million for discovery and $2.5 million for education. The discovery represents 2 rounds, which will be voted in September. That was part of the 22-23 budget and not included in the 23-24 budget. And then a neuro concept that will be presented. For the education, we budget at the max historically, but it depends on the type of education grant. It varies by the type. So that one this year is $2.5 million. In slide 12, we're proposing $62.5 million for infrastructure. Concepts will be approved by the board for shared labs, the $2.5 million for patient support grants, and $10 million for possible resubmissions of the manufacturing network grants. So in slide 13, we want to point out something that there's a change that's being proposed for the 23-24 fiscal year.
Pune, can you hang on a second? It looks like Pat has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to ask, for some of the categories you provide information on the average grant size. For DISC, it wasn't there. What's the average grant size for the DISC?
I think
I got the total 62.5 million expected for this coming year, but what's the average grant size?
so. I will let my colleague Rosa, Dr. Kennett, answer that.
Thank you, Pune. Hi, Dr. Levitt. It depends on the program. For D0, the average size with indirects is $1.5 million. For these 2 is an average of $2.5 million with indirects. As you know, it's 1.5 in directs for these 2. And then for neuro, we are still working on it. Just to clarify, the amount that we are requesting for neuro, it could only be for the one of the is a large program, and it could be for the RFA that will come in 23-24. That's going to be more than 1 RFA when we propose the concept.
And those amounts are for the total award period. They're not for the single fiscal year, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
The award period is 1.5 for D0, 2.5 for these 2, and we have not determined yet, but we have an overall amount for the first RFA for the neuro with an approximate number of awards that we are thinking within the scope of what we are thinking of funding. But you will see the details in September.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Pat. Back to Pune, please.
Okay, so up to now, the research budget presented included efforts that started the grant cycle in the upcoming fiscal year, but did not always get to the final board approval before the end of that fiscal year. So the change we're proposing this year is that starting in fiscal year 23-24, we're making a shift in how we request funding. We will be requesting the amount expected to be committed in that fiscal year. This means that barring any unforeseen circumstances, everything being proposed in the 23-24 research budget will go to ARS or ICOC before June 30th. And so with that, the next slide is the summary of what we're proposing. In sharing with you what we're asking for in 23-24, we include the data we shared in the earlier slide about 22-23 as a comparative. So in summary, we're asking for $464.1 million in 23-24 in the pillars shown. And with the amount of committed this year, that's a variance of 133.7 million. So I can go a little bit more detail into that. The forecast for the budget is optimistic because we want to ensure that there's enough funding for all the projects that may come before the board. And we don't want a shortfall of funding in the budget to get in the way of research being funded. If there's no questions, the last slide just asks for board approval for the 464.1 million in 23-24, but I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Hearing none, would somebody like to move that we approve this proposal?
So moved.
So moved, Mark Fisher Colby.
Second, Pat.
Any board comment on the motion?
I just want to make one. There was a meeting last week. I think it was last week. I lost track of time. There was a neuroscience task force. And there was a comment made by one of the presenters about the size of some of these disc grants. And Rosa, you were there. I'm just wondering if there's going to be discussions or flexibility, if there's enough flexibility in the budget, particularly for the disc grants, to reevaluate that if the information provided by the individual is accurate or not. Of course, it was just the opinion of one individual, but it was brought up in that meeting.
Excellent point, Dr. Levitt. Yes, and the answer is absolutely. We are taking that into account, and we hope that we will be able to fulfill all the needs that we have been hearing throughout the task force meetings and also from the board members and other stakeholders that we are having conversations with as we are developing this concept. And in September, we hope to fulfill all these needs in a harmonized way. So yes.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yes, excellent. Scott, do we ask for public comment about this proposal at this point?
Yeah, we sure do. If there are no further comments from members of the board, we'll open it up to public comment if there is any. I'll ask for help from my colleague Doug to help me identify if there is anyone on the phone. It doesn't look as though there is any public comment.
Yes, no public comment.
Great, thank you, Doug. So we're ready to take a roll call vote.
All right, please call the roll.
Okay. Haifa Abdul Haq,
Yes.
Deborah Dees, Elena Flowers, Elena, maybe you're muted. I'll come back to you, Elena. Judy Gasson,
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just had a phone call. Can you say that one more time?
Sure, this is the roll call vote on the motion to recommend approval of the budget to the board.
Yes.
Thank you. Pat Levitt,
Yes.
Shlomo Melmed,
Yes.
Chris Miaskowski, Vito Imbasciani. Vito appears frozen on my screen, so I will come back to Vito in a moment. Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Keith Yamamoto, Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
and Vito.
Dr. Melamed has his hand raised.
I'll after the vote.
Vito, are you able to unmute your phone? Shlomo, perhaps you could go ahead with your comment. We'll just take a pause in the roll call while I establish.
My comment is I'm assuming this will pass.
Yes.
So I'm turning to the group, and I have one concern, which is more of a perception than a reality, and that is when we pass a budget like this, which is so significant, I'm concerned that people assume that this is a handout, that these are given funds which are going to be spent. I think we should make it very clear internally when we do our press releases and our public announcements that all expenses will have to undergo peer review first. And this budget is not really an expense budget as one would normally undertake in an organization. This is just a framework from within which the peer review process would allow expenditures.
Well, I think those are great points. I've been remiss in not bringing it up here, and of course, all of these expenditures are in California, and most studies I know of conclude that funding of research actually is net gain over time because of value to the state economy. This is also a point that our communications people should probably pick up on in whatever press release they generate today. I don't see any of them on the line.
Yeah. But Larry, my point is more about peer review, that these funds will not be expended just because we passed the budget, and that all the projects will have to undergo peer review.
Absolutely. And that's an important point as well, that there's a quality standard that's imposed on the whole process. And if we got no grants of adequate quality, this grant, we wouldn't spend any of the money. Great point.
Correct. That's an very important for the PR people to nuance in their releases.
Great, thank you, Larry. I'll resume the roll call vote. Vito Imbasciani,
Yes, sorry, I was following audio and visual. I just got grayed out, which is not an editorial comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vito. With the vote 10-0, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any other business on the agenda. Scott, do we open it up once again for any public comment?
We do. If there's any public comment for a matter not on the agenda. Again, I'll ask Doug for some help in identifying that. I don't see anyone.
No public.
Great.
All right,
Thank you,
good.
Larry.
So I don't think we have to vote to close the meeting. So with that, I don't want to spend any more time unless somebody has something important to bring up. So thank you all for your time and attention. We've done a good thing today, and I'm excited about what's coming in the new year. So
Great. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone, for
everyone.
joining.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.